Welcome to Blackstone's Masterclass series. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Merc Arvalo, and I would like to thank everyone for joining us for another session with Blackstone LaunchPad's Masterclass. At Blackstone, we help make entrepreneurship accessible to all students, and these workshops are just one way we do it. So today's episode of Masterclass, we'll be learning how to negotiate with confidence. Whether you're negotiating with prospective clients for a small side hustle or a supplier for your growing retail company, today you'll learn various strategies to create the best possible deal for you and the other side. Leading this class today is Rachel Stern, a UB alum. She received her BA, JD, and MBA from UB, so all three. Is currently the president and founder of Pink Buffalo Consulting. Pink Buffalo Consulting serves a wide range of customers from startups, small businesses, large family-owned enterprises, or nonprofits, aiding them in a wide range of services such as business operations, contracts negotiations, copy editing, and personal finance. On another note, she's actually also a Western New York Prosperity Fellow. So if anyone has any questions on that, she's also a great person to ask. So if everyone could please help me welcome Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, what a marvelous introduction. And I just want to say that I would not be in the position that I am without the immense support from a lot of people at UB, most especially Hadar. For a period of time, she was my second mother. She might still be my second mother technically. And you are all so lucky to have an amazing resource in Blackstone LaunchPad and in the venture coaches. For Prosperity Fellowship, she absolutely made the program into what it is. And again, having those opportunities, they were made because of Hadar. And so I do encourage you, if I know the deadline has passed, but if you're thinking about applying for next year, please do. If you have any questions about Prosperity, I would love to answer them because it was absolutely life-changing. And so, in the interest of time, so again, here's some services provided by Pink Buffalo, as Marika mentioned. My main clients include the Cellulose Insulation Manufacturers Association, which is a trade group in the sustainable building materials industry, and a boutique negotiations firm called Medvec and Associates. And frankly, they're the ones who helped me get to this spot with the negotiation side of things. There is a book that my boss developed. I helped with the graphics, and all of this information, well, it's copyrighted, of course, for, the visual appearance. All of this information is available in that book, and I encourage you to buy it. It is called Negotiate Without Fear, and you can just buy it on Amazon. Shameless plug. So moving on, before I begin, how many of you, and I'm trying to see in the little thumbnail, how many of you, raise your hand if you get nervous about the idea of negotiating with someone? It could be a boss or a prospective company. It could be a customer, supplier. Let's see, show of hands, raise them high. Oh yeah, quite a few of you, because it's scary, right? It's really intimidating to ask for things. It's really intimidating to say, hey, I've been doing a lot more than my job description entailed. I would like to have a raise. The price of this thing went up, so therefore I need to increase my price. It's a tough question to bring up with people. And then just out of also a show of hands, how many of you currently have business ideas or have a business that you're working on? All right, there's a few. Great. Well, I'm going to show you 4 tools today, and you basically use 2 of them to populate the 3rd and then the 4th. So 4 key tools. Again, happy to make these slides available as well. And so let us continue. So what's the number one thing that we fixate on in a negotiation? price. Again, like I said, it could be our salary, it could be the price of a raw material, or what the customer is going to pay us. But in order to be successful, we need to identify a range of potential issues. We don't want to just fixate on that single, thing that's holding us up. And how do we identify a range of issues beyond just what's the price? By learning about the other side and understanding their objectives for a negotiation, and as well as examining our own objectives deep down. For example, maybe you're negotiating with a customer looking for a long-term partner, or maybe your new workplace or your prospective workplace is looking for someone who's okay coming into the office, but you want that work from home flexibility. Well, that's an example of an issue. And maybe you want a workplace that's willing to invest in your development. Perhaps if you want them to pay for graduate school or something of that nature, this is where having a list of objectives is going to help you drive the negotiation and the outcomes that you want. So the easiest way to identify objectives is by creating a chart like this. So on the left side, you've got your objectives. On the right side, you've got your negotiable issues. We'll get to the negotiable issue side of things in a moment. So for every negotiation, you should have 3 key objectives. First, addressing the other side's pressing business needs. Second, building the relationship with the other side. And then third, differentiating your company, your products, your services, or differentiating yourself. Again, I'm trying to make this more general for those who are perhaps interested in seeking employment in a more traditional approach, not just a startup perspective. Let's first talk about addressing the other side's pressing business needs. So we need to make it about them. After all, you will get more when the other side gets what they want to. I always use the expression be a pronoun checker. It's not I, but it's, what is it that you need? How can we help you? The next thing, that building the relationship. You're going to have one-off negotiation situations like buying a car, for example. That might be like a high and buy type of thing where you don't really care about a long-term relationship. But in other scenarios, again, including with a boss or including with a customer or client, you may be working with this person or this company for a long period of time. So building that relationship is super important. And then for differentiating yourself, we'll get to that in a minute. But in short, it comes down to how you set yourself apart. So let's take an example of this. So for Mirka and other venture coaches who might be there, a good parallel would be typical objectives when negotiating with a client. Say, for example, you're a venture coach now, but you think, all right, I can make a little bit more money off of this and offer these coaching services to startups and get paid for it. So we have some of these items on the left as our key objectives. Again, we have our main 3, addressing the client's pressing business needs, building the relationship, differentiating yourself or your company. We also have objectives like highlighting the impact your company can have, educating the client or again, startup or whoever it may be on the impact your company can have, reducing commoditization, expanding footprint, touch on that, increasing their dependency on you. There's a way to get a board seat, for example. That's a good example. That's something that you may want to aspire for, and that could be listed as an objective. Improving your company's pipeline, and then revenue growth and impact. Ultimately, money. Now, again, those are just an example of some key objectives. What about the right side? Because for every objective, we want at least one corresponding negotiable issue. And we'll add those to the chart as you see here. So we have a great starting point with tons of negotiable issues. So again, how do we address the client's pressing business needs? We can provide updates with senior leaders. We can provide insight sessions for the executive team and for the board. We can provide briefings and, you know, presentations. We can also show metrics for impact. You know, you hired us to work on your website, you know, by having you know, this first website phase of the website completed, you can see that you have, you know, 3 times as many views and, you know, all these clicks and that kind of thing is an example of metrics for impact. The bet on your company can, on the impact that your company can achieve. Again, board updates, go into a few of these other things. Issues like the ability to use your client's name. Why can I say that my consulting firm provides executive training for Google, McDonald's, Microsoft, all these other Fortune 100 companies? Because we negotiate for that. Another thing is, you know, the length of the engagement. And then lastly, of course, fee. Why we do care about getting paid. So we include lots of things that can be used when entering into a negotiation with a client. Again, this is just a template example. And one thing that I do want to call out as well are these bolded and highlighted objective and issues. These are what we refer to as footprint expansion issues. So how can we build a stronger relationship with the other side where they become even more reliant on us? So think about other issues to add to the mix here. Say that you've got a customer or a client that has a problem that needs to be resolved in the next few weeks. We're definitely addressing a pressing business need, but maybe we include a negotiable issue related to bringing on additional support to help meet their particular timeline. And you'll see how we use these negotiable issues in a few minutes. This is a personal example with my trade association. So again, I'm the executive director of the Cellulose Insulation Manufacturers Association. I got into it because one of the 43 North winners from several years ago, Clean Fiber, was a company that I was a contractor for. And when it came time, they were a member of this trade association. And when it came time for the previous executive director to retire, my boss recommended me to the role, knowing that I was interested in policy and that I could also manage a group of 50 to 70-year-old men with relative ease. Let's be honest, building materials are a very male-dominated industry, and I've got those guys wrapped around my finger. So again, this is a personal example with a trade association. So I had the initial call with the board president in September. Thank you, Dylan. I had the initial call with the board president in September of 2021, followed by an in-person meeting with him and another board member in November of that year, and then an interview, a video interview with the entire board in December of 2021. Now, during that interview with the full board, they were asking a lot of questions about my skills, experience, and all of that. But I was also throwing a lot of questions at them, like, what are you looking for? What did you like about the previous executive director? What are you looking for in the next executive director? What are your pain points? From there, I was able to come up with this list of objectives and issues. Are some of these mine? 100%. Highlighting the impact I can have, expanding my footprint within the association, all of these things. Yeah, it's a bit self-serving, but I also care more than anything about how can my company and my services address their pressing business needs. So here's the negotiable issues that I came up with. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. So participation from a legal standpoint. I'm an attorney. Never intended to go in the traditional sense. but providing some of those legal services to help merge the US and at that time separate Canadian entities into one. The range and type of services offered. They were looking for someone who knew marketing, who knew finance, who was good with all of these things. And I was like, I hate marketing. But I understand that that's something that they need. Availability and timing. They didn't need someone full-time. I didn't want to be full-time. I cared about learning and development, learning a lot of technical stuff that I had no idea. I'm familiar with the industry from the perspective of one manufacturer, but it was mostly on the business side of things. There's a lot of technical stuff when making building insulation that I never knew about. Again, things like board updates, event planning. There's an annual meeting every April. We need someone who can help make that happen. Things like payment terms. What do I care about? I care about getting paid no matter how much I work. If I work way more, then yes, we'll talk about additional payments then. But I don't want to have to nickel and dime. And what I do and what I advise everyone who I talk to, who basically serves as an independent contractor in similar capacity, is monthly flat fee. You get paid X amount per month based on a particular range of hours that you work, but no timesheets, no BS, no feel the need to say, hey, you owe me a few $100 more and feel embarrassed about it. And again, you see some other negotiable issues there. So remember that third point about differentiation? Let's discuss that for a second. So picture your differentiators as the things that set you apart. How can we use them in order to achieve a successful outcome? So, what are the current alternatives? How are you better? How can you negotiate around that? There's one thing that I want to add though, and that is we never differentiate on price alone. Because I'm cheaper is not a good reason for me to hire you. And especially if it's to, for services like, building a website or creative services in particular, ladies always, undervalue themselves. We never say, oh, because we're cheaper. Because what does that ultimately mean? Because we're no better than them. Not how it works. So let's imagine your differentiators as thumbtacks on a corkboard. For every differentiator, you want some sort of corresponding negotiable issue that addresses the question, why does that matter to my customer or my client or my supplier or whoever it may be? And to illustrate this, let's use that personal example again about the trade association. So my differentiators are that I have business skills, I have legal skills, and I'm self-employed. So what are some of the corresponding negotiable issues tied to business skills? Well, I can do public speaking, I can do marketing, I still hate it, but I'll do it anyways. I'm good at operations, I can provide basic bookkeeping, I understand how revenue growth works, and I also have solid writing skills. So, sometimes writing, for example, blog posts are outsourced to other companies that, you have to pay a third party to do it. I don't need to do that. I can write. So again, these are all things to negotiate around. Legal skills, also writing, contracts, if a non-disclosure agreement is required, you don't need to hire a law firm. I can do it myself. RFP generation and response. RFP is request for proposals and corresponding responses. I'm able to review those, again, come up with some parameters. Review of legal documents, again, saves money. And also, again, those negotiation skills. Now, being self-employed, this is one that I definitely want to spend another just a bit more time on, because being self-employed has, in some cases, it can be really terrifying, because, for example, I am responsible for all of my benefits, for my retirement, for my insurance, all of those things. On the other hand, I work from home. I have flexibility. So, having this flexibility is really important to me, and it's important to my trade association. Flexibility around travel, that's great. They need me to go to a conference somewhere, I can. The connection with other professionals, also very valuable. Why? Because I have friends who are either in policy, who can help me get into the right person at the Department of Energy. Or in the case of our trade association's website, I literally ran into a high school classmate who I had not seen since high school here in DC about actually a bit less than a year ago. He was the one who ended up doing our website. Why? Not only did I think his price was reasonable, but his work was also so much better than these professional firms that I had been looking at. And I just thought, I'd rather go with someone I know, someone who I can trust. When it came time for the branding as well, I actually contacted my dear friend, Celine Kazan. Celine is also a Western New York Prosperity Fellow alum and UB MBA alumna as well. And Celine did an amazing job with our rebrand, which again, given my audience of 50 to 70-year-olds, had not been updated in literally several decades. So, thank you to Celine for that, and to Mike for the website. And then also overhead expenses. They don't have to worry about it. I do, but to what extent can they help pay for maybe some of my phone bill or some of my internet, every month? So again, these are examples of differentiators and corresponding negotiable issues. Before I proceed, who's got questions? No? We good to move on? Cool. So the next tool is an issue matrix. So those first two tools, remember, are objectives and issues chart and our differentiator chart. This next one is an issue matrix. It's a basic graph with 4 quadrants, though we only care about 3 of them. So the first up is storytelling issues. Those are things that are easy for us to give and important to the other side. Contentious issues, important to us and to the other side. And trade-off issues, important to us and easy for the other side to give. Now, how does this all tie together? We take those issues that were in the right side of the objectives and issues chart and the bottom squares of the differentiator chart and plot them into each of these 3 quadrants. So here's kind of a better illustration of, again, our storytelling. Easy for me to give, important to the other side. Contentious, important to me, important to the other side. And trade-off, important to me, easy for the other side to give. Why do we not care about the bottom left quadrant? What's easy for me to give and easy for the other side to give? Because they're easy. There's no give and take. It's all just give, give, give. And we want to be mindful of not including things that seem dumb in our negotiation. So let's illustrate this using the example from the trade association. So my storytelling issues are the variety of business and legal services, the growth of the organization in a mutually agreed upon time period, the time commitment, and then travel flexibility for events and representation of the association at meetings, and then the leadership or growth of the Canadian Association. I'll explain how it worked with the Canadians in a moment. Well, I'll just say this. They're Canadian, so it works out wonderfully. The contentious issues, my salary, contentious. Success fee for bringing on additional members. And then I wanted a business credit card, and I also wanted terms affiliated with that, meaning I didn't want to feel like I had to ask permission for every expense. And so I said, what I want is a business credit card that I can, basically a personal card, but that I can use for business expenses, but dedicated to the trade association. And I don't want to have to ask the board for permission to buy anything if it's under $500. They said yes. And then also trade-off issues. So for me, what was really important and what was easy for them to give was access to my predecessor and for what time period. What they thought was, let's give it a year of access to my predecessor. My predecessor is 80, by the way. He said, shoot me a text whenever you need anything. I have sent him a text many, many times. He has replied within 5 minutes. It's great. For the association to pay for fees for partnerships and events, that was important to me. I do not want to have to pay up front and then get reimbursed. And then what was also important to me was a monthly stipend for working outside of the home office. And they're like, oh, you mean a co-working space? And I said, I tried working at co-working spaces. I don't really like it very much. I still feel like I'm tied to a desk. I'd rather go from, one place to another, so basically I like working from cafes because I can try new ones, and they're, it's, I can find the right kind of vibe that works for me, and all of that. And they're like, oh, so you're looking for a monthly stipend basically to buy food and coffee at restaurants. And I was like, exactly. So what's the final thing that we use to tie them all together? Mesos, multiple equivalent simultaneous offers. And this is gonna make me dizzy. So what is ultimately, this is what you are presenting to the other side. You are presenting a single PowerPoint slide with 3 different options for the other side to choose. This is not a good, better, best, option A, good, B, better, C, best scenario, but more of a, you can go with this one or you can go with this one. And I don't care which one you pick because in my mind, they are equivalent in value. So how do we populate all of these cells? Because you look here, there's over 40 cells of on this chart that we need to populate. We take all of those issues from our issue matrix and pop them in the far left column. So we start with our storytelling issues, and then we put in our contentious and trade-off issues. Then we go across each of these options and vary them for storytelling and hold constant for contentious and trade-off. Usually vary price though, as it's frequently dependent on everything else in the column. So what does that look like for my personal example? So again, it's modified a little bit from what I had in the issue matrix, but this is exactly what I presented to the board about a week after they extended me an offer to serve as the executive director. So legal services. In option A, that would mean a legal review and updating of bylaws, whereas in options B and C, that would mean a legal review and updating of bylaws and a transfer of the 501c6, which is the designation for trade associations, from Ohio to Washington, D.C. The next issue was website services. So this would have been in conjunction with the marketing committee, but they're like, we desperately need a new website. And I was like, yes, I desperately know. because looking at this existing website is infuriating to anybody who, you know, cares about imagery, and it looks like it was done circa 1995, so it really needs an update. And so in options A and C, we included a creation and review of an RFP, again, a request for proposal for a website redesign, and a rebranding of the logo. Oops, we lost everyone.
We can still hear you. We're just having connection issues on the other laptop.
Okay, cool. Rebranding of a logo and a design package. Again, Celine. And then in option B, we have creation of the RFP for website redesign, but no working through a logo and design package for branding. The next issue is social media. So they're like, we don't have any social media presence. That's really important to us. And I'm thinking, darn. Why? Because I hate social media. So in option A and C, we have content creation and maintenance of social media channels handled by an intern. Whereas in option B, I was going to be the one to do it. Heads up, I got it. In the next issue was the leadership and growth of CMAC. CMAC was the Canadian Association. So the under option A, we're going to have a plan in place for assuming leadership of the association by Q4 of 2022. And in options B and C, we're going to put a plan in place by Q3 2022. So just a little bit sooner. Here's where things again really varied. What was easy for me to give but important to them? Anticipated monthly time commitment. So 60 hours in option A, 80 hours in option B, and an unlimited period of time in option C. And they even said, you know, do you want to submit a timesheet every month in case you go over a bit? And I said, see that squiggly line in front of the 60 and 80? That means approximately. So some months might be 50 hours. Another month might be 70 hours. We're just keeping it all the same. A stipend from working outside the home office. So this is a monthly, again, a stipend, you know, I can use the credit card and it's not something that I need to pay for personally for when I work from a cafe or restaurant and, you know, I buy myself a sandwich. So in options A and B, that was $150 per month. And in option C, it was $200 a month. Access to Danley, again, that's my predecessor, said reachable across all of these because this was a trade-off issue, which meant it was important to me and easy for them to give. I held that constant and I said reachable through the end of 2022. Fees for partnerships and events with affiliates included across the board. That business credit card included across the board, and any expense under $500 does not require prior approval from the board before I pay for it. They have also said since then, for any travel that I do related to an event, I don't need to request approval either. The success fee for securing additional paying members. When I started, there were 16 producer members, so 16 manufacturers and 10 associate members. These are suppliers. And we said, you know, in options A and B, we're not going to include a success fee. However, in option C, we're going to add $1,500 as a one-time fee for each additional paying member that I bring onto the association. And so we had an initial fee for February through April, and then once my predecessor completely retired, a fee for May through December of 2022. And in February through April, because again, I was kind of onboarding and working with someone who was still being paid by the association, I kept it constant at a certain amount per month. But once I took the reins for May through December, I said, all right, I want this amount plus $2,000 in option A, this amount plus 2,500 in option B, and this amount plus 1,000 in option C. Now, why did I vary it that way? Because again, we're not talking about good, better, best. We're talking about multiple equivalent simultaneous offers where they can choose any of these and I'm happy with it. And then lastly, the term of the initial agreement made consistent with the SEMA fiscal year. So the truth was I didn't really care, but I knew that that was important to them. So it was also nice to not have price is your bottom issue, but to pad it with a softball, like the payment terms, for example, to make it easier and also just look more flexible. So this was the exact mezzo that I presented to the board, except where it has the X, I put in actual dollar values, and they took a step back. You know, I will probably went like this back in their chairs from you know, being close up and seeing everything on the on my screen when I did the Zoom call. And so like, all right, yeah, we need a day to digest this. And I said, that's okay. Let me know if you have questions. Ultimately, what they came up with and what we conceded on, because there were some concessions to be made by both sides, was a little bit of each, but mostly it was option A, except adding a success fee, and the social media was handled by me. It's still being handled by me. Actually, it's supposed to be handled by me, but I'm not doing a very good job. So I'm going to talk to them at our board meeting next month about hiring someone. So that's where we're at. So again, how did we get here? We had our negotiable issues and, you know, everything on our objectives and issues list. We then came up with a list of corresponding differentiators and negotiable issues that related to each of those, plop them onto an issue matrix, and then use the issue matrix to come up with the final product. So that's what I got. I can stop my screen and or stop my screen sharing and answer any questions.
Thank you, Rachel. I really appreciate your time and sharing your expertise, and that example was really helpful. Really appreciate the framework. I've never gone into an employment negotiation, so the lens that I'm looking at all of this through is through employment.
Okay.
But I see the value in it beyond just employment alone. And I really appreciate that about your presentation.
Yeah, and for employment in particular, that is where like you can come up with things like you know, if you're looking for, again, it's not just the salary, it's certainly the benefits. You know, you want what is best for you, but even things that are important to your prospective employer. You know, you gotta talk to them and say, all right, what are these things that are most important to you? And say you've got particular expertise in something, and that's part of the reason why they're hiring you. Well, you can offer to do things like lunch and learn, or you know, even if there is a team retreat, offer to lead a presentation during the team retreat. Include that as part of your multiple offer, again, to make it look more robust, because the more storytelling issues you have, the more you can negotiate and get what you want on those contentious and trade-off issues. And use those storytelling issues to leverage your position with that prospective employer.
question. I have obvious confidence with all of this negotiating, but was there a time when you didn't? And when was the switch?
Yeah, I mean, I think the worst group to negotiate with is the federal government. And I mean, I've only had that experience from a federal standpoint, but I know even local and state governments, what do they care about? The bottom line. You can give them the world, but if someone gives them, you know, the world minus a handful of things and it's $2 cheaper, they'll go with that. So honestly, for that, I mean, my advice always is try and make an in directly with someone. And also even things like RFP responses that I've done where they say, you know, upload your proposal and they have a template and all you can submit is one proposal. I've advised people put in the multiple offer anyways. And again, get an in directly with someone, because talking to humans is so much better than trying to just do everything through some portal. And that leads me to another thing. You know, raise your hand if you have negotiated for a salary or, you know, a job or something like that via email. Cool. Don't do that anymore. Everything should be synchronous communication. What does synchronous mean? It means face to face. And if I can't see you, you know, face to face, then let's do a video call. And if it can't do that, if, you know, for some reason that's not feasible, let's at least do a phone call so we're talking in real time. The biggest benefit though of synchronous communication in this kind of setting is I have an easier way to read the room and to read facial expressions. And you know, again, it was kind of, even when I presented this to my board members for the trade association, initially it was a lot of deer in headlights and blank stares. And that's what you're going to get, because most of the time you are giving them something that they have never seen before, nor have they ever expected anything like that. And so to present it to them, so rather than emailing this to them ahead of time and saying, here, I'm going to go through this on our call, what I did is I got on first and I shared my screen and walked them through it, and then said afterwards, you know, all right, take a few minutes to digest. And we literally took 3 minutes to, you know, it was kind of, you know, it's kind of awkward silence, of course, where they're reading through everything. And they're all on their own individual screens, mind you. You know, they may have been texting with one another, you know, like, is this girl out of her mind? But it was still the type of thing where, you know, giving them a few minutes to digest. And then I said, what questions do you have for me? And it was, you know, well, I mean, the biggest one that they had was, how long do you think this is going to take? You know, do you think that it's going to be 60 hours a month, or do you think it's going to be, you know, 100 hours a month? My response to them was, I have no clue. Until I get in, I really don't know. But I'm also amenable to starting with what's most comfortable for you, and then, you know, proceeding from there. And if we need to reevaluate this in a few months' time or a year's time, we are able to do so. And after I've gotten my feet wet. And that was a good enough response for them. And truthfully, that's exactly what we did. I now spend about 100 hours per month working for the trade association. And yeah, we had to update our agreement. And what was really nice is, instead of doing a $1,500 one-time fee for each new member, they said, you know what, let's do 20% of the annual dues for each new member, which meant that varied, but it actually gave me even more of an incentive to say, all right, let's find our paper suppliers, let's find our equipment suppliers, bring on all these new associate members, and we had 10. Now we are up to 16. We've added a few new producer members as well to our association. And so, you know, frankly, that's been enough in bonuses for me that it's, you know, it pays for, you know, a vacation or two. I mean, well, at least it's paying for my vacation to Germany in a few weeks. So, it's really helpful to have that. And again, this is a success fee. This is good for them and also financially good for me. But to go back to your original question though, like, yeah, federal government, oof.
Thank you.
I do have one question. You walked us through, like, you present the material and then you give them a few minutes to digest. And then, like, we understand the conversation doesn't end there. Can you walk us through, like, your experience of what happens after? Like, how long do you wait? Like, how much do you push back? At what point, like, might you just walk away from a client because they're not willing to negotiate?
That is a fabulous question. So, let me see if I can reshare my screen. Are you seeing the mezzo? All right.
Yes.
So what I might do, and this is actually a really great thing that you can do now with Zoom. I mean, certainly if you're face to face, that is the best, but even with Zoom, here's the annotate button. I will go text. Hold on, let me make sure. I'll go with like red, for example. And if we say, you know, if they're like, you know, we're not going to agree to the $150 monthly stipend, I might say, all right, let's strike that out. And, you know, what other changes can we make based on what you're seeing here? You know, and you don't want them to cherry pick necessarily, because that also does affect this bottom number here. But you also need, you know, giving them some deference to say, all right, yeah, I like this one. So, yeah, let's go back to, you know, I really like this. Let's do this. And can we basically use what is best for both sides to create an option D? And that is what you will, when you follow up via email, and send them a PDF of this, you know, of this slide. Again, try and limit to a single slide. And they're good with, you know, this, this, you know, all of these things here. Oh, but you know, they'll do this, and you know, mostly at this amount. But you know what, instead of 2,500, they'll say, you know, that's a bit high, because we're actually giving you a better incentive with, you know, right here, we're doing 20% of annual dues instead. Let's change this to $2,000 a month. And again, that's how you are conceding. You are hearing what they have to say. And by, again, making some of these adjustments in real time, or if you're, you know, physically in the same room as them, you know, bringing a pen and jotting it down and saying, you know, is this acceptable to you? This is ultimately what goes into a contract, or an employment agreement. And again, it's not the prettiest thing, but you can mark this up as much as you want and as much as they're comfortable with, because it shows you are hearing what is important to them, what is of concern to them, and that you value that. The question of when to walk away. When it seems like they are almost abusing your time, or they're structuring things in a way that, you know what, I appreciate what you're looking for, but it seems like these services just really aren't in my wheelhouse. I'd like to refer you to, someone else I've worked with in the past, or, or perhaps something else that might be more along the lines of what you're looking for, because we never want to get jostled around. And it's also, I think, just a showing of self-respect to be able to say no. But here's another reason why I really recommend these monthly flat fees for independent contractors, is because this gives you some sort of guarantee of income. When things, and I have an example here, I'm going to just stop sharing my screen. And also, I had a client, so I had already started working with this client a bit before I landed the position with the Cellulose Insulation Manufacturers Association. This client, we had an agreement, it would be about 15 hours per week, and it would be paid as a monthly flat fee. And she completely abused me. And what was interesting is she was based in California, and I would get calls at 9 a.m. Eastern time. I'm like, it is 6 a.m. where you are, lady. Like, get some shut-eye. It'll do you some good. And I felt like she was really eating into those 15 hours in the course of like 3 weeks of working for her. But I felt like, geez, I haven't landed anything yet that could be a replacement for this, where I feel comfortable saying, it was nice working with you, let's part ways. And, I think that comes from also just sometimes, in any job, you need to suck it up. But finding freelance work through Upwork that helped supplement income until I reached that point with the trade association where I could say, all right, we've hit the May of 2022 mark where my stipend went up. I feel comfortable saying to her, it was nice working with you, but this, no. When you're talking about contracts though, or I'm sorry, the multiple offers though, and you're trying to figure out, is this worth pursuing or not? Use your gut instinct. Again, if they're really jostling you, you should know your worth. And the whole point of this presentation is to say, all right, because I have these differentiators, because I have, all of these skills and all of this knowledge that will benefit, this is what I can charge, and this is what I can do, and this is what I can charge for it. And if someone does not see that, or is not willing to meet that as close as possible, you move away. Because you will find someone who will value you. And yes, it might take a little bit more time. And yes, it might mean living with a roommate for, another year, or, doing whatever you have to do to conserve your expenses. If you're in a crappy job, conserve your sanity as best as you can until you find the right thing to get out, because you never want to just take the next thing that comes your way and say on the first day, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into?
Thank you.
I have a question. Do you feel like when going to like the negotiating table, like do you feel emotion is definitely like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like sometimes when they tell you no, you get like that emotion of like, I feel like I deserve this and I earned this. Sometimes you get like a little bit of like pride. Do you feel like that plays a big role in like negotiating? And if so, how should you like best combat those like sensitive emotions while negotiating?
Yeah, it's incredibly emotional. And there's also like, there's nothing that's more, like, what are you kidding me? Than hearing no. And sometimes it's literally, you can present something like this to them and they say no. And your response is, I understand. Tell me what we can do to make this work. And if they say, I can't make this work at all, then you step away. If they're not willing, again, both parties need to be willing to make concessions. That includes you too, as that person presenting the multiple offer. You know, I do think at the same time, though, again, this speaks to knowing your worth. And if you can't back up your value, say, for example, you're asking for a raise and you've put in all this extra time, you've taken on additional projects, you have demonstrated that you're willing to go above and beyond to help the team. You're perhaps helping mentor new team members. And, you know, you say to yourself, all right, I'm really worthy of a raise here. And they say no, you know, is it because there's a, you know, a freeze in the company on bonuses or on raising salaries? You know, what is, you can find out the reason for that. But if you have successfully explained your contributions and everything that you have done thus far and everything that you can continue to provide, again, through the course of something like a multiple offer, and they continue and they say no, that's when it is time to just say, all right, we need to figure out the next step, because this isn't going to let me, you know, I'm going to have difficulty progressing in my career if I'm working for a company or for a boss who cannot see my worth and who cannot value my worth the same way I do.
Thank you.
I think those are all the questions from our end, Rachel. Want to thank you again. If we could all give her a round of applause. Great session as always. As expected, you know, we heard you were coming. We're very excited. So in the interest of time, like, we will let you go. For everyone else, I hope you guys could stay on so we could share some upcoming events.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rachel.
And here, my email is rachel@pinkbuffalo.com. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, or even you just want to do like a one-on-one of some, you know, the exact same thing, just so it makes a little bit more sense, happy to do so.